Hi again and welcome to the channel. We're doing another Zoom today with the patrons on our Zoom regular patron thing for the Zoom. And I've come across some very interesting information from the Naadi Oracles. So I think before I start, I ought to tell those that are new to the channel what the Naadi Oracles are all about. So the Nadis, you can read about in my book, Messages from the Universe, and the other ones. And the Nadis are based in India, and they're ancient Indian texts that we don't know how old they are. Anybody coming on now, please mute your mics. So we don't know how old they are. We think they go back 5,000 odd years. They've been rewritten every 500 years. So they've been carbon dated to about 500 years. But they've been rewritten and rewritten right the way back through history. So they are a very, very ancient oracle. So these messages are written thousands of years ago, and they know everything about whoever questions the oracle. So they're absolutely mind-boggling and completely incomprehensible to us today to understand how these oracles ever know these things thousands of years ago and were able to write them down. These people had conquered time. They'd seen through time and were able to give us messages from the distant past. So right back in ancient times, these oracles were written 5,000 odd years ago. And I've been in touch with a friend who's become a close friend of mine now, a man called Kim Sol. And he's written a brilliant book called Compassion. And it's all about his exploration of the Naadi Oracles. And if anybody's really interested in this topic, please go and read it because it's very, very interesting. It's available on Amazon. It's a bit of an amateur sort of put together because I published it for him and put all the covers and everything together for him. But Kim's a really interesting man based in Denmark. And he has access to a number of these Naadi Oracles that I don't. And he's asked two of the oracles some information about the war in Ukraine. So Kim's come up with another oracle for us to look at. And again, if you're really interested in this topic, have a look at my books too, Messages from the Universe, and that'll and Mystic Journey to India. That'll tell you everything about how these things have completely transformed my life. So we have two interesting messages. Now, the first one, Kim got this from the Mahaguru Agastya oracle. Sheila will correct me if I've pronounced his name wrong, because I always get told off for pronouncing his name wrong. And it's from the Prasna chapter, which was asked on March the 9th, 2022. Now, the Prasna chapter is a little known chapter in the oracle. It has the main chapter, or they call them kandams, which tells you about your life. But you can also access a chapter, a kandam in there with questions. So we asked the oracle the question about Ukraine, what is happening with the war in Ukraine, to see if we could get some insights into it. So I've got it on paper here, and I'm going to read some of this to you. And this is what Saint Agastya says. First, this chapter explains about the many identifications of the person asking about the war and invasion from Russian army into Ukraine. Okay, so obviously they tell you, first of all, who you are, what your name is, and things like that. The oracle always has this written in it, including your mother's name and your father's name and things like that, and your time of birth. So this is the thing that makes the oracle so remarkable. How does it know these things, particularly when you consult it completely anonymously? First identification is about the person asking about this question. His rising sign is in Scorpio and the moon sign is in Pisces. So that's a couple of identifying things that Kim would have had about his life. Second identification, in the current Tamil year, Pillava, in the Tamil month, Masi, on the 24th date of Tuesday, on a Tuesday, the star is Karthika on new moon, Sashti Thithi. Okay, I don't know if I got those names right for the names of the stars. And the moon is in Taurus, Jupiter is in Aquarius, and Saturn is in Capricorn, corresponding to the English date of the 9th of March 2022. So that was the time it was asked, and this was already written in the oracle in advance of that. Mahaguru Agastya says, beloved child, all the lives are treated equally in this world, and you too were born as a human. That too is a spectacular human. You two were born as a human, that too as a spectacular human with spiritual thoughts to help humanity. So it's praising him here for what he wants to do. You shall continue this good work with the blessings of me, Brighu Maharishi. Brighu was the Brighu was the inventor of astrology in according to Tamil legend, and all other saints who are enlightened to live. And it goes on, beloved son, the war that is happening now has been there since 9 months with revenge as a motto. This all has happened in the south to southwest direction from your location. So Kim's based in Denmark, so I presume that's why it's that direction. It is more than 20 hours of travel. There is going to be a lot of quarrels, man-made disasters. And now these are the important bits. President, ministers, and the securities, and all the other common people of this country might be in danger and at risk of being killed or forced to become refugees, and that's a fact. So they're saying this on the 9th of March, saying that everybody is in danger of becoming a refugee near enough. We'll discuss this in a moment. This will all end once Venus goes back into its own house, Taurus, during the first half of June in the year 2022. So now this is not me predicting this, remember, this is the Oracle of the Naadi that's suggesting here that the war will end in the first half of June 2022, which is optimistic, sooner than I would have thought, but let's see what happens. Then it goes on, this is intriguing, we'll talk about this too in a moment. The other Persian countries like Syria, Iran, and Iraq are likely to have war or to be involved in this war. Before the war stops, Ukraine will gain help from other countries, and the people of Russia will more and more protest to their leaders of their country to stop the war and start peace. So they're suggesting here, then, as you can see, that the war protests will help to stop the war. And it goes on, because you asked me this question, I have answered you. And then it goes on to give him some remedies for his own personal life and how he can find happiness in these times. And I won't read the rest of that because it's kind of not relevant to this. But then he also consulted the Mahashiva Sushumna Nadi, which is another Nadi. I've consulted both of these Nadis and found them to be extremely accurate. So in the Mahashiva Sushumna Nadi, it was asked on the February the 25th of 2022 at 4:35 p.m. And it said, let me tell exactly about the present situation in Ukraine, which is attacked and invaded by Russia, and what will happen further on. The palm leaf says that presently there is a great crisis in Ukraine, many soldiers' deaths, bombings and destructions of materials and houses, etc. But Ukraine will overcome it all and will not surrender. This is the Ukrainian people's destiny. Despite the bad people stroke Russia causing these present problems, then this problem will be solved. The people of Ukraine will get a good solution, and all the bad people stroke Russia will come to leave the country Ukraine. Om Namah Shivaya. So that's what we got. Now, I'm quite intrigued by what it's got there. You're welcome to unmute your mics now if you want to talk or got any questions or comments. But one of the things that I would just first say there that I found particularly fascinating with this was the comment about Persia, what was once Persia, you know, because Jane predicted and was saying that she saw people going into Ukraine with, she had this quite strong vision of people going in there with red hats, and also people with blue hats. Now, I said, oh, blue hats, James, probably United Nations. That sounds a good sign. Red hats, what's the red hats all about? And then we see that the Israelis wear the red hats, the red berets, you know, and Israel's getting quite involved in this in a lot of ways as well, isn't it? Because the leader of Ukraine, I forget can't pronounce his name at the moment, you know what I mean, he's Jewish. And the Israelis have been coming on board saying, we want to start giving you support, start giving you arms and things like that. So could the Naadi be right there? Could perhaps something being stirred up in Iran? And funnily enough, the other day I was saying, when I was talking about doing predictions, I said, I feel we're going to get something from Iran soon. Something's going to stir up about that very shortly. So there's some interesting thoughts there, I think. I'd love to have a bit more than what we've got, but I think what we've got is quite interesting because, you know, the Naadi is so spot on. It certainly has been in my life and people who've consulted it with me. And I know Elisa's had a Naadi reading here, and Sheila's, I think you've had a Naadi, I think at some point. No, you haven't yet, no. Okay. But yeah, so there's some of my thoughts. What do you think, guys? Any comments?
Yeah. I wonder where China fits into all of this, because they seem to be a bit hand in glove with Russia, don't they? So, any thoughts on China's involvement in this? Will they help Russia out?
Well, my thought right from the start was, I mean, the Naadi hasn't said anything there about that, has it?
No,
But
no.
my thoughts with China is that China will get involved. In fact, I've said at the beginning that I
Yeah,
felt that China would take advantage of the situation with Russia moving into Ukraine and take a stab at Taiwan. And there's been a
yeah,
hell of a lot of press about that recently.
yeah,
Whether they're going to do it or not, I still feel that China's going to have a go at Taiwan and try to move in.
yeah, yeah.
But you know, we
I
still
think,
have free will. You know,
yeah. I think China and Russia would be uncomfortable bedfellows. I think they're so dissimilar that, that they would eventually fall out.
it wouldn't
Uh,
end well
I don't.
because Russia and
No,
China have always
no.
hated each other through history. I
Well, they
mean,
have, yes, yeah. But I think they can. They're trying to see themselves as allies at the moment, but I don't think it'll work out.
I think China looks out for its own best interest all the time at the moment. You know,
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
it really wants
Yeah.
to become a country that, first of all, dominates everybody economically. And
Mhm.
once it gets to a certain point, I feel, once it gets to a certain point where it knows it has the advantage, it knows it has a major edge over particularly America,
Yeah.
then I think it will start much more saber rattling. I think it would be a much more of a
Mhm.
danger, not just to Taiwan. I think it would be a
Mhm.
danger to Japan, and I think it would be a danger
Yes.
to India.
Yeah.
And we really, and in my opinion, you know, we have to learn from this quickly because we've been putting
Mhm.
money ahead of everything. You know, everybody. It's been the age of complacency, really, hasn't it? You know, you think about it, all
Yes.
the cultures. It's all been cafe culture, and so everybody's sort of not thinking about the world. As long as I'm comfortable, who cares about the rest of the
Yeah.
world? Who cares what we spend our money on, even if it's coming from these regimes in China? Um,
Yeah.
as long as we get cheap goods, we're all happy. But you
Yes.
know, I mean, but really dangerous, isn't it? Really, really
It
dangerous.
is. Yeah.
Really
China seems to
dangerous.
be, quietly taking over the world through the back door, doesn't it? With all these cheap goods.
Exactly. Yeah.
Everybody's buying from China, and we don't seem to want to stop. Well, we can't stop because we need the goods. Well, we think we need the goods.
And
Yeah.
you can't even decide, can you? Because if I want to buy something on Amazon, I think, is that made in Germany? Is that made in Britain? Is that made in India?
Yeah.
Is it made in?
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you it's made in China.
No.
And if I had a preference, I would
No.
choose a democratic country to buy from. Um,
Well, yes. Yeah. We're all having trouble like that. You buy something on eBay and it's nearly always seems to be a Chinese seller, but you don't really find out
yeah,
until you bought the item and it comes and hey, it's made in China.
or even
Yeah.
like we don't know, like P&O Ferries here. You know,
Yeah.
it's owned by Iran, isn't it? Or, Saudis or something. It's not even
Oh, I
owned.
don't
It's not
know.
even a British
Yeah.
company. And
Yeah.
what used to be a British company, of course, famous, but And it's the same with all our brands. You know, we got these brands that all seem to be British or American brands, famous names, and they've been bought out by Chinese money.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so that's where I think the subterfuge of it all come. But I think it's quite optimistic, isn't it? Because it seems to suggest, it says here that
Yes.
it thinks it tells us that the war will be ended by that first half of June.
And that Ukraine will win, which is very optimistic, I
Yeah,
think. But
because I
yeah,
felt in my early predictions that you saw there that I thought Ukraine would hold out, you know, which was against the
yes,
odds when I said
yeah,
that. I mean, I thought I'm
yeah,
really sticking my neck out saying this,
yeah,
but this is what I feel.
yeah,
I mean, a huge Russian invasion force on their border, and these guys with limited resources were able to hold out. It's absolutely
yeah,
um, fantastic for the world to
yeah,
think that,
You,
isn't it?
you actually said, Craig, in a previous video, it was remarkable. You said that they would give such a fight. And, you know, it's good that you go back and look at some of the videos sometimes and play them and see what you got right, because that was quite a surprise. Such a small country. I didn't expect that, you know. So your prediction was really spot on for that.
Yeah.
They
And
would
if I
put up
get
a
these
fight.
things, they come in like a flash, and I'm almost looking at the predictions after and saying, "Did I say that? Oh my God, I must be mad," you know. But you have to go with what your unconscious gives you, and or your clairvoyance, I suppose. But it comes through like an unconscious sort of clairvoyance. These things, I think. Yeah, and I just feel so happy for the Ukrainian people that they are showing us an example of how we perhaps should all be a little bit more, you know, prepared to stand up for what we believe, and how quickly and how delicate democracy is, and can come under such a lot of it can fall to pieces so quickly. You know, I mean, today in America we're getting a lot of revelations about the computer sort of business with they've got oh, what's his name, Clint, I've forgotten his first name now. Oh, Hillary, you know, the computer with oh God, brain, I'm getting a senior moment here. With Biden's worrying about the email releases, you know.
Oh yeah.
Brain, sorry, it's where I'm talking here. But we got all sorts of, so many underlying threats to our democracy all the time, and we've been sort of sailing through it, sleepwalking. And I think I'm hoping that this Ukraine is going to really be a wake-up call, that we must start to value our democracies, both at home and overseas and collectively. And it shows that if the democracies of the world can get together, we can exert quite a force with our powers as economies. And surely shouldn't we sort of be applying that force, for example, to the Uyghur people in China? Or shouldn't we be applying that same force to the people, say, in Iran, even who are being suppressed, or use that force against the gay communities that are being persecuted in places like Pakistan and Afghanistan? You know, I mean, we have a tremendous power collectively, but if we just all the time just waltz along, not caring, and just, I'm happy, that's all that matters. You know, I've got my espresso coffee, and I've got my Netflix, and I've got all the rest of it. You know, all those other things, mind mulching sort of stuff that we live in our normal banal lives. I mean, if we start to wake up, I think we should all wake up a bit more politically, because, you know, spiritual people have to also be active in the world. You know, that, don't they say that evil triumphs when good men do nothing? You know, and this is where this era of complacency, in my opinion, has been very, very poor.
Well, I
Craig.
thought that.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. Go ahead, Pat. No, you go ahead.
I thought that Putin had actually gone mad, and I thought that's what it was all about. But now I think he's actually waited until his moment, hasn't he? He's picked his moment when America's got a weak government,
Yeah.
and the world's been through a pandemic and is still going through a pandemic. He's chosen that moment, and I don't think he is mad now. I think he's very coldly calculating. Yeah.
And the Chinese would do the same with Taiwan. That's what I'm saying. You know, I mean, they're biding their time as well. I mean, any good general bides their time and then pounces at the right time when it's their opportunity. You know, I mean, we must be prepared for this. In times of peace, prepare for war, they say, because otherwise, you know, great democracies have fallen. You know, look at the Carthaginians who were destroyed by Rome, and they sowed the sea with salt. You know, so sowed the land with salt. I mean, that's that just early example of how democracies, you know, other people don't want you to thrive if you're militarily minded sort of dictators. And I think we're going to see much more of this as time goes on too, unless the democracies of the world really do start to pay attention to these things. Because I think I think that Naadi's right. I think we will see something in the Middle East very shortly. I feel something very serious is going to happen there. And I also think we're going to start seeing many more serious global changes that may disrupt the world. You know, I'm going to do another video later on, not today, but about the Edgar Cayce prophecies about things such as the earth shifts and things like that. I think that's something that perhaps we've neglected, you know, not just environmental, but maybe if the polar changes and things like that. Yeah, so these are my first thoughts about it anyway, and certainly what the Naadi has to say here. But so it's talking also about them maintaining peace for humanity, you know. In there it says that it talks about the need to maintain peace for humanity, and I think that should be on everybody's lips now. And surely we've had so many things, haven't we? We've had all that pandemic should have brought the world together, and now we have all the Ukrainian crisis should bring the world together. I mean, maybe there's going to be more, but when will? And I think tragedies happen in a person's individual life often. When you get complacent, because I've often found in my life, if I start getting a bit complacent and it's starting to, like when people retire, for example, they get complacent and then illness hits them, or you get complacent and money troubles come your way. Because I think it's in life, you shouldn't just put your feet up. I think life should be you should be actively working to become more conscious, you know. So as soon as I stop, if I have a lazy period where I stop my yoga, stop my meditation, stop doing regular walks, start eating bigger meals and putting your feet up and watching hours and hours of Netflix, you know, something will normally happen to make me think to myself, I think I'm going to get back into action again, you know, because the universe has given me a kick up the behind, telling me that it's time to think again about projecting your life into a more spiritual vein. And I've found that if one is consistently doing spiritual practice of whatever kind you might find is your personal type of spiritual practice, I find that life normally starts to go much, much more smoothly. Less disruptive things, less unexpected bills, less unexpected tragedies. Because I think it's the universe perhaps gives us a kick every now and again to make us think. You know, it's like it wants us to do well. It's a mother, it wants us to thrive, but every now and again, the child needs a bit of discipline. And I think the same thing happens on world events. They're not random. There's some conscious force behind it, albeit kind of perhaps an unconscious conscious force, you know. I don't believe a God in the sky sort of Father Christmassy sort of God, but I do believe that there's sort of a movement of consciousness. There's a movement of karma. There's a movement of energy always that's behind the scenes making things. This is the key to events, as it were, you know. Any thoughts?
That's excellent. I think that's great. And it's given me a bit of a slap thinking how complacent I've become during the pandemic. And I totally agree with that. I just want to backtrack. I mean, as you probably know, in Hinduism, the earth is an ecosystem. It's never, so it's beautiful, the description you've given. It's really great description. So the earth works together, everything works together. And fortunately in the 21st century, that adoption of that idea has now come through. So it's really true what you say. I just wanted to backtrack. I have a keen interest, not a brilliant astrologer, but I'm very keen on it. And the last couple of months, I think from around January, February, we are very aware in Vedic astrology that there are many planets in the sign of Capricorn, including the nodes Rahu, Ketu. I'm a Capricorn, my ascendant is Capricorn. Venus is what Sri Agastya through Kim Pezo says, that when Venus moves. Now, I'm not quite sure why, because Venus is friendly in Saturn, they're friends. So it's in Capricorn at the moment. Maybe because of all the other planets, especially the Rahu, Ketu, Mars is there, which everybody knows the planet of war. I wonder if that's why when it changes in the first half of June, that things will get better.
Yeah, Mars is exalted at the moment. Mars is exalted, and
correct. Yeah.
Saturn particularly.
I have Mars Venus in my first house, so it's both exalted. So you're absolutely right. I wonder if that's why things are going to get better, because Venus will move out. Maybe
I think perhaps they're putting Venus as a marker, perhaps, because Mars is going to move too, and I think it's probably the change of Mars that's going to make the big difference, actually, and its relationship to.
I did read that there's a Kala Sapa Yoga now in the sky, which sort of means that all the planets are sort of cramped in between Rahu and Ketu, and they usually say that's very karmic, right? The other thing that I would note is I did read somewhere, and I did encounter an idea that when Mars and Venus are conjunct, which they are, it usually indicates war. And maybe when that conjunction starts to split, this is just reading, Vedic astrology, that I think the warlike energies maybe start to dissipate a bit more. But like you pointed out, Mars is exalted, right, in Capricorn. So it's extremely strong at the moment. But if Venus represents some sort of peace, right now it's Mars that kind of, maybe trumps Venus somewhat, right? And then I can't help but also remember that the nodes just shifted according to Vedic astrology on the 16th of March. So Rahu and Ketu, I think now in Aries and Libra. And if Aries, right, Mars and Aries are connected, right, in a way, Mars is the ruler of Aries. So Mars is very strong now because it's connected to Rahu. Libra is Venus, that's Ketu. That's where you've been, right? It's kind of what you're familiar with, where you've come from. Rahu is what you're hungry for, insatiable for. So in a way, Mars is very strong now. I mean, this is just kind of me putting bits and pieces together, but that's how I kind of think of it. But then I know the Nadi timing, it's not quite the same as there's so many different systems of timing, but it's not quite the same as the most astrologers would use, I don't know, the Lahiri timing, perhaps. It's not exactly the same. They've got different timing. So I'm not sure when that timing is in the Nadi leaf when Venus moves out into Taurus, right? Craig, that's what you said. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, well, the Nadi is less of an astrological chart, although they refer to the astrological charts. A Nadi reader will look at your chart sometimes to get confirmation about something, or if there's something they're unsure of, they look at your chart. But the Nadis are kind of beyond, although it's a form of astrology as such, it's as you know, it's beyond sort of astrology.
Yeah,
it's kind of geniuses from the past telling us information about the future.
Yeah.
Remembering, of course, always that the Nadi itself is not set, because otherwise you wouldn't have the remedies, would you? Because the remedies mean that we can change our future. So that would be both or we can negate the negative effects of bad karma. So something that was going to happen is still going to happen, but it won't be so bad if we do various remedies. And so, a war, an invasion of Ukraine could have been prevented and had just been a couple of people firing catapults rather than all these bombs. If we knew the full remedies for that. Yeah. So it's not quite astrology, but it's something. Food for thought. But I think those changes that you've mentioned, Elise, I think, they Mars and Venus are quicker moving planets than Saturn. So hopefully those are the ones that are causing the problem at the moment. And they move their positions a bit quicker. So hopefully it will mean the end of the conflict. But I hope the Nadi's right with this. First first half of June, most people would say that's extremely optimistic, I would have thought, because some people are talking about a prolonged war. But it seems to suggest there too, doesn't it, that the people of Russia will sort of rise up in a way, will start to protest and stop the war themselves. So perhaps that's where the hope lies, that the Russian people will start watching, saying things like this YouTube and other YouTubes, and start thinking, hey, you know, this isn't my name. And just like they tried to stop the Vietnamese War, I mean, it put pretty much
Actually, I think Putin's got a lot to lose now, because his own people, he's got that threat from inside. He's got those massive sanctions from the outside. Even if he stops the war now or does some kind of, you know, try to, you know, kind of get out of it in some way, maybe through a peace talk, it's going to be very difficult for it. It's like kind of admitting you've lost in a way, right? Unless there's a bridge built between Ukraine and Russia, everybody saves face, right? But if there isn't, he really doesn't have an out that is easy, because the West is already, you know, they've already said, we're against you, you've done something wrong, right? He's got everything to lose. And even if you take parts of Ukraine, it's going to be so difficult to hold on to it without massive problems just in your part, you know. I think Putin's not smart. He knows. and Zelensky knows, which is why maybe he's saying we need peace talks now, right? I think in the news a couple of days ago, he was sort of saying Russia needs to come to the table and do a peace talk now. He's kind of saying, let's have the out, let's have the talk, let's build that bridge so we all can get out of this.
Yeah. The problem is, I see in my earlier predictions, I foresaw, didn't I? I said I saw a corridor between being built between Russia and the Crimea. I felt that's how it would end. But you know, my thoughts now, as I see this happening, is those Ukrainian people, would they allow Russia to hold on to anything there? I mean, they're fighting for every square inch of their country, and I don't see them ever really wanting to make a compromise. I mean, not this a compromise, you know, but I mean to allow the Russians to say keep a corridor. Maybe the way out would, from their point of view, would be to say, well, we'll allow Russia to send its troops across our countryside and communicate between Russia and Crimea, and we'll stay out of NATO for now. But Putin's got to take something away with him, hasn't he? Otherwise, it's not just his. It's not just a wasted war, but he's going to lose it, isn't he? I mean, in these sort of businesses, dictators, they always fall eventually, and they usually fall because they're so bloody minded about what they know best over everybody else, and they insist on impossible. They're high-risk gamblers. Stalin was, Hitler was, you know, real high-risk gamblers with what they do with their warlord work. And every now and again, one of those high risks will not pay off, and the problem is it means the end of their dictatorship, because it survives on the idea that I'm always right, and you know, I'm the invincible leader. So I think Putin's going to put his whole neck right on the line with this completely.
Yeah, do the Nadis say anything about Putin being brought to trial for war crimes?
Well, no, this is what I've got.
He's guilty of war trials.
This is all I've got. I think the rest of it we have to think. Yeah. I think Putin might lose his life over this. Actually, I think Putin's more likely to lose this. I don't think it'd be. I can't really see him being brought to war crimes, because, you know, we can only drag someone to be brought on war crimes if we defeated a country. You know, if we've invaded Germany, we would try to put Hitler to war crimes, but we never catch him, do we? You know, it's all the rest got clobbered, because he finished himself beforehand. And I think Putin would never allow himself to get to that position. And I don't think the Russian people would do that, because they're very proud people too, aren't they? Really, you know.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
So just trying to turn off mute Sarah's. Yeah, there we go. So I'm starting to learn how to mute you now. Any other thoughts from anybody else on some of these issues or questions or ideas?
Craig, what is the difference between the two Nadis? I know that there are many, but what exactly is, because you've got two different sets of information there.
Yeah, well, there's I can't remember how many Nadis there are. There's so many Rishis. I think it's 49 Rishis. I think there is. I'm not quite sure if I got the number right. The big most the governing one is Agastya, as being this sort of the Rishi of the Rishis, as it were, and each of them have a different Nadi attributed to them. To the Sushumna one, I've consulted that one. Sushumna actually means the channel that runs up the middle of the spine. It's that nerve center, as it were, on either side of Bigala and Ida, that runs up the middle of the spine in the Kundalini. And so they're all written by different rishis, basically. And if you consult the Nadi personally, I've consulted different ones of these. They're held in different libraries because they have various libraries to hold these Nadi leaves. And if you can find different ones and compare them, they explain your situation in a slightly different way each time. So the Sushumna was generally a lot more wordy, I found. It went off and talked a lot about Pravati talking to Shiva and asking about this person's life and things like that. And then there's other ones, I can't remember the name of the first one I consulted now, but the first one I consulted was all sort of done in one big block. You know, they gave the whole lot in one go. And most of them are divided up into chapters, kandams. And each of those kandams you could consult for different aspects of your life. But this was the prasana, which is a separate sign of like kandam, which is for asking personal questions. You can ask a question of the Nadi, which is very useful if you've got a specific problem that you need to ask. So, you know, I've asked it about various things, including even health things for people. And it gives a specific, and it knows all the time, it's got the answer there. It knows the question you're going to ask before you asked it, but you've still got to ask the question, as it were. And it's all there written there already in advance, you know. It's like a guru, when you go to see a guru and he knows your mind and knows what you're going to ask, and you don't even ask to ask the question. I mean, the Nadi is a living thing like this, and just amazing, as those of us that have consulted it know. I'm going to ask a couple of Nadi readers to come on and talk sometimes on the channel too, if you want. So we might better sort of track down a few Nadis for you as well in due course, if you want to get involved in that in the future.
Do you think the Nadi readers, do they have a different perception of time, perhaps, than we do? Because to know the future, they must have some different perception of time, I would have thought.
I think it's a bit like the nature of time as described by quantum theory, you know. I mean, we live in a sort of a time where time comes past, present, future. There's ideas in quantum is that maybe time can happen all at once, you know, without a beginning, middle, and end. And perhaps if our consciousness, if our awareness is actually withdrawn from this world into the deepest, innermost part of ourselves, where that absolute is, you know, maybe in that point we can see everything all at once. And then when a Nadi's written, it's just know it all, you know. It's like sometimes when you do clairvoyance, you just know, you don't know why. I think it's beyond our comprehension.
At a very high level, do you think the Nadis exist to help people to remove their karma so that then they can contribute to the evolvement or the raising of consciousness in the world? Is that, like, at a very high level, is that why they exist?
I believe it's all about enlightenment. It's all about helping people to come to self-realization. And one of the and a certain point comes in a person's life where they've got enough karma to want good karma to want to move forward onto the next spiritual stages of their life. And from what I understand with the Nadi, it's like people come to a medium, they come wanting to ask a question about something banal and end up being given something that has change their whole perception of life, hopefully. And I think that's what happens when we approach the Nadi. It tells us about our karma and tells us how we can move that karma out the way for the purpose of helping us to become more spiritually awake. Because it always kind of just gives you that little nudge onto a spiritual path. And maybe sometimes it's just a compassionate thing to help people avoid terrible suffering and give them another chance, because it treats everybody the same. You know, I can introduce what I think is not a very nice person to the Nadi, and it treats them almost like talking to a child with compassion, and helps them to find their path again. So it's like talking to a guru. I found it. I like talking to a living person. Well, it is a living person. It's a living person speaking to you, but they just use this incredible means that just written on a piece of parchment type of thing, which is the palm leaf, a solidy sort of parchmenty thing. And you think, well, God, you know, it's better than the iPhone. And they had this all those centuries ago, you know, an incredible tool of communication. And particularly like Kim,
sorry, like the war in Ukraine that's specifically detailed in a Nadi is part of the big picture for the world. Like, I'm beginning to think that maybe, as absolutely dreadful as it is for the people in Ukraine, that this will be quite a pivotal event in the history and of the world, and the raising of consciousness in the world, and the unification and coming together of lots of countries. Do you think that it could be quite a important event?
I think so, more so. I mean, we've had big wars before, like I mentioned Vietnam, didn't I, before? You know, that came and went. It had it made a lot of changes in the world. But this time we've got so much more communication worldwide. You know, we don't just have a media. Well, I mean, we questionable our medias in all the countries, but between us we have a network of communications, which means these things reach more people. So I expect there's people, you know, I mean, people there in Australia are talking about it, people are talking about it in America, they're talking about it in Japan, they're talking about it probably up to a point in China, you know, and it's filtering through to all the countries of the world. And I think this communications we get, particularly I think things like we're doing now, must be raising our collective consciousness, must be. And I think it would have a marked effect. And I think we're going to have more troubles ahead. There's going to be more terrible things ahead. But like I said, it's like the universe has to give us a bit of a kick sometimes. And then we start thinking, right, okay, it's not all about putting my feet up and just going and having a cocktail and all the rest of it that everybody seems to want to do in life. It's more, let's start doing a bit more spiritual sadhana on ourselves and start thinking collectively about all of us as being all common humanity, and be a bit concerned when we stuff into another triple all-you-can-eat meal, and when there's people starving in around the world, you know, it makes us think twice and really start to sort of think, right, I want to think about those people that are going without. I think we can relate more with Ukraine than any other country, because those people we can relate with because they're very much like us. You know, they've got quite a high culture there. They've got supposedly some of the best coffee in the world, coffee shops in the world in some of the areas there they had, you know, and when we see them on television, they're dressed like us, you know, and we can, and bad as it is that we can only see that superficial thing, but it does hit our hearts when we see a little child dressed holding a teddy bear. It could be one of our children, you know, and it takes away that you know, these are just refugees, or these are just, you know, people suffering in another country somewhere else. You know, we see it and we think that's like us, that's like us. And I think that's one of the reasons I think it might make us hopefully think a little bit more about all of humanity. Why should any person in this world with so much plenty starve? You know, I mean, why do we have to have guns all around the world? You know, why do we have to have all these, spending fortunes on making these missiles and things? You know, okay, that we need them for defense, yes, but we've got to find a new way of running the world. And there's too many of us, because now when it gets out of hand, it can affect everybody. You know, there's just so many of us in this world. We've got to start thinking about solutions that are international solutions, because no one country can fix it. It can only all be fixed if we all work together, you know, and that's both on the war side of things and also on the political democratic side of things, and on the feeding everybody side of things, and the energy resources that we're running out of rapidly in time, and all the problems we're likely to face in the future of the world with the environment and all the rest of it, they can only be solved together. And I hopefully this Ukrainian crisis is just one little chink of light, perhaps, that does show that if people work collectively together, you can solve things up to a point. Although in many respects, I think the complacency of it all, we should have gone in there straight away, really. I mean, just stop. You can't give a dictator an inch, can you, really? Otherwise they take the whole lot. Yeah, but we need to work collectively, you know. And I think a lot of spiritually minded people are thinking collectively, don't you think? You know, when you look at the comments on these videos, you can sometimes you look at them and you think there's a lot of good people in this world. You know, sometimes there's a few odd idiots, but most of the time there's that people have good intent, and that's got to be a good thing. It's got to be something that's perhaps new in the world.
Craig, could you sum up what the Naadis had to say, the two different Naadis?
Did you miss it?
Or could you, yes, could you sum that up, each one?
Yeah, the most important facts that came out of it really were that the things it said here is that the President, ministers and securities and all the other common people of this country might be in danger and at risk of being killed or forced to become refugees. And that's a fact. It was saying that in the March one. And this will end once Venus goes back into its own house Taurus during the first half of June in the year 2022. I mean, that's the key bits. I'll publish this video, so you'll be able to have a look at it, Kathleen, as well later on. And in the Shiva Nadi, that Palmley says that presently there's a great crisis in Ukraine, many soldiers' deaths, bombings and destructions of materials and houses, but Ukraine will overcome it all and will not surrender. This is the Ukrainian people's destiny. And despite the bad people in Russia causing these present problems, then this problem will be solved. The people of Ukraine will get a good solution and all the bad people in Russia will come to leave the country Ukraine. So optimistic, I think, there. And someone's at my front door. Should have told it to be quiet for a while. Yeah, so any final last thoughts? Because I'm going to finish shortly soon.
Well, the Vedic astrology for both Zelensky, this is a number of different Vedic astrologers, really do see Zelensky's life in great danger. He's all this 8th house stuff. And people predict, a number of them, not just one, that he just astrologically, he's in grave danger right now.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. We're sending Boris Johnson over there to perhaps protect him a bit. A lot of good. I think it's scare away all the troops, you know, send that cloud out.
But both you and Jane see other countries intervening. Is that correct?
Excuse me. Well, one of the thoughts was I wonder whether Israel might intervene. It seems an unusual sort of country to suggest, but you know, maybe you know, there's going to be, they might send in some of their more secret troops and things like this, and this sort of hit squads type of thing, and maybe someone's going to have a shot at Putin. Even Mossad could probably get to him, maybe. But you know, I'm not saying that. I'm just, those are the sort of thoughts we've have been there floating in the air a little bit, you know.
What do you suggest we do to help remediate the situation? Just use whatever spiritual practice you engage in to send light over there. Is that what you recommend?
The Naadi suggested that to this person that they do the Mahachadi Homan. I'll have to check out and see if that is meant for him personally, or whether there is something. It would be quite nice, actually, perhaps to ask the Naadi again if there's anything we could do and maybe organize something between us, like a Homa. Would be very interesting to try, wouldn't it? This is, I think, half the problem, though, isn't it, Kathleen? It's this: we all feel so helpless. Because I mean, I'm sure if there was a fund to stop, we could all pay some money to stop it, we'd do it. Or if we could send some stuff there to stop it and help it, we do it. But there's so little we can do. We're all kind of having to stand back, and the best they've done is give them some arms, you know, and hope to God that they can hold their own. I can't see it. I think, you know, any visualization for peace, I think, is a good thing, you know, because if we want something to happen in our own lives, we have to have a picture of it first. You know, even in the simplest things, we have to be able to visualize something before we can make it work. So I don't play football, but saying I was playing football, in my mind, I've got to see that football going into the goal before I kick the ball. So we have a visualization of what's going to happen. And I think if we can keep a positive thought in our mind, and collectively we start thinking more positively about things. It's the same when we do healing, isn't it? We do spiritual healing. You don't think about the illness. You don't think about that horrible cancer. You think about that being cleared and full of light and the person healthy again. Our visualization's always for the goal that we want, not for the obstacle that's in its way. So I think each of us can, I mean, I did put a meditation up on one of my other videos for this here, but I think each of us is in our own way. I think in our meditations, particularly if you meditate, I think meditation is not just something we do within ourselves, but it can be a very powerful active force in the world. And if in that depth of meditation, and anybody can do meditation, think of meditation as just going into the silence. Keep it as simple as that. If you don't know how to meditate, just go into the silence. And in that silence, seed a thought of something good for the world. I like to seed a thought, first of all, for people in my family and people close to me. Then I like to seed a thought for those that are reasonably close to me, you know, people like yourself, you know, and my friends. And then I like to see the thought for the people of my own country, that the country around me may be well. And I also like to see the thought for the world. And I think that's quite powerful, because we take our feelings for our most intimate friendships and loves, and we extend that to everybody. And I think if you do that in your meditation, it spreads the harmony, it spreads the love, and it spreads your light. And I always say the mantra to myself, Loka Samastar Sukhino Bhavantu. I've said this one a number of times. It's the old Indian mantra. It can be said two different ways, but that may all the beings in all the world be happy. Because if everybody's happy, most of the problems you've had in the world have fallen away. You know, we might not be able to cure illness, but we can perhaps be very happy through it nonetheless. We might not be able to cure poverty, but perhaps we can also be happy nonetheless, because it's our spiritual approach that is 99% of overcoming suffering. And I think if we think like that, maybe that's the best we can do. Maybe that's all we can do.
Could you put that mantra in the comments? Because I was going to ask if there was a mantra we could use. If you could put that in the comments, maybe.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I'll put this video up again, Pat, and I'll put it I'll put a thing up on the screen so everybody can see that one.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful one on YouTube. Craig.
Oh, we lost Sheila. There is some lovely ones on YouTube. Put it in the comments, Sheila, and we'll catch it later. We lost you. I think the internet, I think the internet itself has got a lot of problems at the moment, I've noticed, probably because it's all being used for all sorts of nefarious purposes.
Craig,
okay, I'm going to have to finish now.
Craig, are you able to share the contact information for these Naadi readers?
I have to say, with Naadi readers, I don't just hand out contact information, because it's not like getting readings and things like that, because I always worry that sometimes I had a problem where I had one Naadi reader and I used to say, oh yeah, go to that Naadi reader. And then he started charging $2,000 just to get the leaf, let alone, you know. So and I've no other ones that are charging hundreds of times the face value of what a reading should be. And I've also given remedies that are far, far in excess of what they should be, and added extra remedies and things. Now, when you see a Naadi reader, I have helped people find their Nadis, but that's usually been quite enough. And to be honest, even the Naadi readers that I find hard to get readings with, even for myself now, because the good ones are hard to track down. So I can't just hand it out because it's just too difficult. I have too many problems involved, and particularly since the I could even legally get in trouble with things too, because these people will predict your death. So that is already putting my own psychic reading service at risk, saying that, because we're not allowed to predict deaths by the law. And so there's lots, and someone got really frightened by it too. That would also be a problem. But it's more a question of the Nadi is like, I describe it like the ring in the Lord of the Rings. It's a powerful thing, but it can corrupt the owner. And very often the good Nadis can go bad. And so it's almost like you've got to chase the Nadi to find the one that's not been corrupted. Because out there, everybody thinks, oh, I'll go on the internet and get a Nadi reading. And there's some real bad stuff out there. In India, your Nadi readers will come and try to get you to have a Nadi reading, and they're not true readers. And until you get a good one, and when you find a good one, it's like gold dust. You need to keep hold of it and only introduce people when they fully understand what it's all about. It's not like getting a reading. So we will bring some. I'm going to bring some on here. Yes.
Yeah, they say that you're fated to have your Nadi reading at that particular time. And if it's fuzzy or not clear or whatever, that's also your fate. But when you do get the real one, you're fated to have it. So, if you see it that way, keep looking.
Yeah, that's exactly, Elise. And the word Nadi has a secondary meaning, which means to seek. It means to seek. So it's something you've got to go and find. I mean, there's loads of clues in my books. I mentioned Khenpe Sol today, for example. You want to read his book. It's quite easy to find it, but you got to do this work. You've got to search. You've got to search. And then if it's meant to be for you, you'll find it. But it's not a question of just, here it is, hand it out, here it is, because I've already learned that that's not good. But we have had Mr. Prakash on here. I might ask him again, and I might ask a couple of other people that are involved in it for those that are truly interested. So there will be something in due course. Okay, I'm going to need to finish now. So I'll just say finally, but if some of the books I've mentioned, Khenpe Sol helped me with this. Have a look at his book, Compassion. And also, if you're interested in finding about the Nadis, have a look at my book, Mystic Journey to India, and in particular, Messages from the Universe. And if you're interested in becoming a patron, come and join us on this site. And if this goes up on YouTube, you'll be able to find the link to becoming a patron in the description below. And you're welcome to come and join us on Zoom as well and meet all these lovely people that we have here with us today. So I'm going to say thank you to everybody. I'm going to say thanks, and I'm going to say bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And just one thing before you go, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Just one thing. Some of the times I'm going to start introducing a little bit at the end, a sort of a follow-on bit at the end when I've said the goodbyes, where if anybody has anything they want to sort of particularly ask about their kind of spiritual work, personal stuff, I'll give some little bits about it just to help people with their, a bit of how can I call it? Mentoring, I think they call it, don't they? So some of that I'm going to introduce at the end, which won't ever be presented on the YouTube channel. It'll be private, okay? But not today.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
it's a great idea.
Just a private bit in. That's definitely not on the YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okie doke. All right. See you all soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.